Have you ever felt a pull toward someone you couldn't explain? A silent knowing that bypassed words, logic, and even time itself. Why is it that certain souls feel destined to cross our paths, again and again, no matter how far apart life seems to scatter us? Is it mere coincidence, or could it be something far deeper calling us back to one another? Welcome to Stillness Unfolded, where we explore the unseen threads that weave through our lives, threads of destiny, love, and awakening. Today, we embark on a profound journey to uncover the truth behind destiny and true love. Why do some connections transcend absence, distance, even lifetimes? And what does Zen and Buddhist wisdom reveal about the quiet power of alignment over striving? In this video, we'll walk through the mysteries of silent recognition, love without chains, the sacred teachings of loss, and the ultimate unfolding of destiny, not as fate to be feared, but as freedom to be embraced. This is not just a story. It's a mirror reflecting truths that may shift the way you see love, loss, and your own path forever. So, I invite you, stay with me until the end, because every part of this journey carries insights you won't want to miss. If this resonates with you, please give this video a like, subscribe to Stillness Unfolded, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice helps us grow this sanctuary of stillness, wisdom, and connection, and together, we can bring even more beautiful teachings into the world. Take a deep breath. Let's begin. There are encounters that happen not in the realm of reason, but in the secret corridors of the soul. One morning, in a world bathed in soft stillness, two souls crossed paths. They did not meet by accident, nor by calculated intent. They met because they were remembering each other. No words were exchanged. No promises were made. Only the quiet thrum of recognition beneath the skin. In Zen, it is said that the flower does not dream of the bee. It blossoms, and the bee comes. Similarly, the first soul had spent years tending its own garden, watering the soil of self-awareness, pruning the branches of ego, welcoming the seasons of solitude. Every silent meditation, every surrendered attachment, every tear that had been shed alone beneath starless skies, had prepared the soil for this moment. And so when the second soul appeared, it was not a conquest. It was a homecoming. Presence recognized presence. Breath met breath. And in that shared silence, something eternal stirred. It was not a meeting of faces or names or histories. It was a meeting of essences, like two ancient rivers remembering that they had once flowed together before they were given different names. Nothing about it made logical sense. Yet nothing had ever felt more true. In that moment, the whole world seemed to pause. The breeze held its breath. The trees stood taller. Even the sun seemed to soften its gaze, as if witnessing something sacred unfolding. The souls did not rush toward each other. They did not grasp, did not question, did not demand understanding. Instead, they simply stood within the field of energy that had been waiting patiently to bloom again. Zen teachings often speak of spontaneous knowing, a deep, wordless recognition that transcends thought. This was that kind of knowing. A knowing older than the bodies that housed them. A knowing deeper than the lifetimes they had wandered through. The mind might have whispered questions. Who are you? Why do I feel as if I have found something I never knew I had lost? But the heart needed no explanations. The heart simply bowed in reverence. In the sacred geometry of existence, certain souls are drawn together not by chance, but by an invisible thread woven long before they first opened their earthly eyes. And so, in the quiet glow of that morning, two wanderers found themselves standing in a field beyond space, beyond reason, reunited not by longing, but by readiness. Not every encounter carries this signature. Not every meeting is a mirror to the soul's deepest memory. But when it happens, when presence meets presence, stripped of stories and masks, it is like hearing a song whose melody you somehow know by heart, even though you've never heard it sung aloud. No clamor, no fireworks, only the profound, undeniable whisper of "Here you are." And in that meeting, the journey inward truly begins. Love, when it is true, does not come rushing in like a storm. It does not sweep you off your feet with wild urgency, nor blind you with promises wrapped in glittering words. It moves like water, gentle, inevitable, finding its way without force. Between the two souls, love did not ignite like a fire needing to be fed. It unfolded like mist rising from a quiet river at dawn. Inevitable, natural, silent. There was no clinging, no desperate reaching. Only an ease, a deep sigh of recognition in every shared glance, every moment of being. Each soul had traveled long enough through the deserts of loneliness to know. To grasp at love is to lose it. To possess is to poison. What they shared required no ownership to be real. The world around them still celebrated noisy love, love measured in declarations, rings, timelines, and vows. But the love between these two needed none of these markers. It was not a ceremony. It was a state of being. They sat together in parks and watched the clouds drift by. They walked beside lakes where reeds whispered in the breeze. Sometimes hours passed with barely a handful of words exchanged. Yet in that silence, an entire universe pulsed between them. In Buddhist wisdom, it is taught, true love grows best in the soil of non-attachment. Where the hands are open, the heart can be full. Where the mind is not demanding, the soul can breathe. And so they allowed each other the sacred space to simply be. There were no interrogations about the past, no anxious clinging to future outcomes. Only presence, pure and unadorned. It was not the kind of love that demands to be validated at every turn. It was the kind of love that simply is, whether seen or unseen. Like the moon pulling the tides, even when hidden behind clouds. Like roots deepening underground, invisible but undeniable. Some days, their paths would converge closely. Some days, they wandered apart, lost in their own solitary musings. Yet neither panicked, neither accused, neither needed to be reassured. They trusted the rhythm between them, a rhythm deeper than daily moods or passing fears. The first soul often marveled at the simplicity of it all, how the presence of the other did not fill a hole inside them, but instead illuminated a wholeness that had always been there. This was not the kind of love that completed them. It was the kind of love that revealed they were never incomplete. Zen masters say, when you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. In this connection, nothing was lacking. There were no grand gestures required, no vows etched into stone, no contracts signed by trembling hands. Only the quiet, constant flowering of mutual respect, of silent celebration. And therein lay the paradox. Because they did not cling, they were closer. Because they did not possess, they were truly held. Because they did not demand, they were endlessly given. Their love was not the hungry cry of two halves seeking wholeness. It was the joyful dance of two wholes recognizing each other across the endless fields of being. Not an addiction, not an escape, but a simple, sovereign, sacred alignment. And so they continued, two flames that burned brightly without consuming each other. Two rivers that flowed side by side without merging. Two spirits who loved enough to allow freedom to remain their common ground. But even the calmest river eventually meets a bend it cannot foresee. And so it was that, one morning, the second soul simply was no longer there. No great announcement, no bitter parting, no visible wound. Only absence, clean, silent, inexplicable. It was as if the mist had risen, and when it cleared, the figure who had once stood within it had dissolved into air. The first soul awoke to find a space where once there had been a presence. No anger throbbed in the chest. No betrayal screamed in the mind. Only a soft, hollow ache, an ache not of injury, but of reverence for something beautiful that had quietly receded. In earlier seasons of life, the soul might have panicked, might have rushed to chase, to cling, to demand reasons from the sky. But solitude had taught patience. Loss had taught trust. And so, instead of resisting, the soul sat. It sat beneath the wide open sky. It sat with the ache, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a companion to be understood. Zen teachings often remind us, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. Pain visited the soul that day, like rain visiting dry earth. But suffering, the story-making, the resistance, the frantic scrambling, was gently set aside. Instead, the soul asked itself one quiet question. What, in this departure, has truly been lost? Not the connection, not the truth of what had passed between them. Only the form, the temporary vessel through which love had flowed. In Buddhism, we are taught that attachment to form is the root of all sorrow. It is not the loss of the form itself that wounds us most deeply. It is our refusal to release it. And so the first soul, heart trembling but willing, opened its hands. It let go, not of love, but of the need to bind love to a particular shape. Not of memory, but of the insistence that memory be relived exactly as before. There was no bitterness, only gratitude. Gratitude for the days shared. Gratitude for the silent music played between them. Gratitude even for the empty space now humming softly where the other soul once stood. Because in that space, something new could grow. Something that did not rely on proximity or touch, but on the deeper, unshakable recognition that true love does not vanish with absence. It transforms, like a candle that, once extinguished, leaves behind the lingering warmth of its flame. The first soul understood, then, that absence is not the death of connection. It is simply another chapter in its unfolding. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is not to hold on. It is to bow to the mystery of timing, to bless the parting as sacred, and to trust that nothing real is ever truly lost. Thus, the soul did not chase, did not plead, did not fold into despair. It simply continued to walk its path, carrying within it the echo of a bond that distance could not sever. Not with sadness, not with resentment, but with a deeper, wider love. The kind of love that no longer needed to be witnessed to be real. The kind of love that knows, when presence departs, essence remains. And essence is beyond the reach of absence. The departure left not a wound, but a silence. And within that silence, something rare began to grow. The first soul no longer walked with another at its side, but it was not alone. Because love, once awakened, does not vanish. It settles into the soil of the soul, like rain sinking into earth, unseen, yet nourishing. Each morning, the soul still lit the small fire that had once warmed them both. But now, the warmth it gave off served only one. And that, too, was sacred. In solitude, the soul began to hear again, not the voices of longing, but the deeper music of its own breath, the pulse of existence itself. Without the presence of the other soul, space opened up, vast and unfamiliar, like a landscape untouched by footprints. At first, the emptiness stung. It echoed with questions, with memories, with shadows of what was. But the soul did not turn away. Instead, it entered the emptiness. It sat with it. It asked it, gently, "What have you come to teach me?" Zen teaches that it is in stillness that the true teachings arrive. Not in the heat of passion, not in the chaos of clinging, but in the quiet aftermath, when the ego has laid down its arms. So the soul wandered, not to escape, but to surrender. Each step through forests of reflection, each breath beneath skies of detachment, brought new clarity. The soul began to realize the love it had known was not a gift from another. It was a mirror, revealing what already lived within. Even in absence, the second soul remained, not in form, but in essence. And essence does not leave. It does not fade. It becomes part of you. The heart no longer ached with grief, but hummed with remembrance. It was as though a candle had once been lit by another's flame. And though the lighter had walked away, the light remained, quietly illuminating every inward corner the soul had once been afraid to look at alone. The path forward was no longer about reunion. It was about deepening, about becoming more present to the life within. In the silence, the soul began to feel it, not just the memory of love, but the love itself, alive, undemanding, and complete. This was the love that didn't crave validation, didn't require reciprocation, didn't depend on closeness or contact. It was a love that had transcended the personal, a love that had become a state of being. And with that realization came freedom, not from the memory of the other, but from the need to make that memory anything more than what it was, a sacred awakening. From that day on, the soul no longer searched, not for the other, not for love, not for answers. It simply walked, not in loneliness, but in luminous solitude, the kind that does not empty, but fills, the kind that does not isolate, but integrates. And in this solitary unfolding, the soul found something far greater than reunion. It found itself. Seasons turned. The soul walked on, not toward anything, but into everything. Life unfolded like a vast tapestry woven by invisible hands. New people entered the soul's orbit. New experiences came and went, but none disturbed the deep stillness that had taken root. Without chasing, the soul became a magnet. Without longing, it became luminous. Then, as quietly as a leaf falling into a river, destiny made its move once more. It happened at twilight, when the sky blushed in soft hues and the earth exhaled the warm breath of a day well lived. There was no announcement, no trembling premonition, only a subtle shift in the fabric of reality. A hush, a breathlessness, a recognition. There, across a stretch of quiet earth, stood the second soul. Changed, weathered by life's winds, perhaps. Softer, deeper, more carved by experience. But unmistakable. Recognition did not rush forward with fireworks. It unfolded like the petals of a lotus in the first light of dawn, deliberate, inevitable. No words were necessary. The eyes, now pools of quiet knowing, spoke enough. They had traveled long roads. They had carried unseen burdens. They had learned. Oh, how they had learned. And now, they stood before each other, not as incomplete, half scrambling to merge, but as two beings whose wholeness made reunion a blessing, not a necessity. They did not rush into embrace. They did not fall into desperate explanations. They simply walked side by side, as if picking up a conversation paused only moments ago, though lifetimes might have passed. In Zen, it is said, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But sometimes, when the soul is ready, so too does the beloved. Not to rescue, not to fix, not even to fulfill, but to witness, to stand as a mirror so clean, so silent, that the spirit sees itself anew. The soul marveled at the simplicity of it all, how easy it was to move in harmony again, not because of effort, but because of the deep clearing that solitude had accomplished. They shared no grand plans, no frantic attempts to make up for lost time, because time had not been lost. It had been necessary. Each step apart had been a step inward. Each silent year had been a year of building inner temples strong enough to house a love that asked for nothing, yet gave everything. As the two souls walked quietly beneath a sky heavy with stars, there was no need to ask, "Where have you been? Why did you go? What happens now?" Because in the presence of true destiny, questions dissolve. Only being remains. Being in the same stillness that first recognized each other. Being in the same silence that had sustained the connection even across distance. Being in the same pulse of the universe that had never truly let them part. Destiny had not orchestrated this reunion through force or manipulation. It had waited, patiently, silently, until both were ripe enough to meet again, not as a rescue, but as a reflection. Not to repeat old stories, but to write new ones. Not to fall into patterns, but to walk hand in hand into freedom. And so, without fanfare, without the need to announce or explain, they stepped once more onto the path, not as seekers of each other, but as companions in the deeper seeking of truth. The path they now walked together was no longer the naive road of early love, nor the turbulent river of longing. It was a landscape shaped by storms weathered alone, a terrain softened by silent understanding. And within this shared stillness, the soul began to reflect on what the long journey had carved into its being. The truths revealed not in moments of passion, but in the slow-burning fires of separation, surrender, and return. 1. Love that liberates, not binds. True love, it realized, is not a cage built of affection. It is a wide-open field where both souls can run free, meeting, parting, reuniting, without fear, without compulsion. When love arises from awareness, not craving, it becomes a force that expands the self, not contracts it. It says, "I do not need you to complete me. I rejoice because you mirror the completeness I have found within myself." Thus, their love had not suffocated under the weight of expectation. It had breathed, survived, even thrived across the vast spaces between. 2. The endurance of connection beyond form. The soul now understood. Forms change, faces age, paths diverge, but essence endures. The connection they shared had not been a bond of skin and bone. It was a resonance of being, a frequency humming quietly beneath all external change. Even when their lives had unfolded miles apart, even when words were left unspoken for years, the thread between them had never frayed. It had simply gone quiet, like a bell vibrating long after it is struck. And when they met again, it was not the bodies that recognized each other first. It was the beings, the unchanging, formless centers beyond all masks. 3. Readiness, not desperation, brings reunion. The soul had once thought love was about holding on tighter, about proving oneself worthy, about never letting go. Now it saw clearly. Love returns not through effort, but through ripeness. It is when you have stopped begging, chasing, forcing, when you have emptied yourself of clinging and fear, that what is truly yours can finally find you again. Destiny does not respond to desperation. It responds to stillness. Like a garden that flowers not because you scream at the seeds, but because you tend the soil and wait for the right season. Thus, their reunion had not been orchestrated. It had been allowed. And in that allowing, a deeper love had blossomed, one free of anxiety, one rich with ease. For every love is a sacred teacher. Not all loves stay. Not all loves are meant to stay. But every love leaves its mark on the soul's architecture. Some loves teach joy. Some loves teach grief. Some loves reveal wounds. Some loves spark healing. Each encounter, whether fleeting or enduring, is a sutra, a sacred text written on the parchment of the heart. And thus, no love is wasted. No meeting is in vain. The soul learned to honor even the heartbreaks, even the absences, as essential chapters in its journey toward wholeness. For it is often the loss of what we thought we needed that reveals the deeper truth of what we already are. The soul smiled, then, not in triumph, but in gratitude, for the years of silence, for the ache of absence, for the quiet return, because it was all necessary. Every breath of longing, every step of surrender, every tear dried alone under stars. It had all been weaving a tapestry, far richer, far vaster, than any story the mind could have written. And in that grand design, the soul now saw, love is not about keeping. Love is about seeing. Seeing oneself, seeing another, clearly, purely, without clinging. And in that seeing, freedom is born, through the slow unfolding of years, through the seasons of loss and return. The soul had come to see a truth so simple, so profound, that words could barely contain it. Destiny is not a destination. It is a vibration. It is not a place you reach. It is a frequency you attune to. All along, the soul had thought destiny was about finding the right person, the right path, the right time. But now it understood. Destiny is not something you chase across the horizon. It is something that awakens within you when you become still enough to hear its call. And love, true love, is simply the recognition of another soul vibrating in the same silent song. It is not fireworks. It is not trembling hands and pounding hearts. It is the soft exhale of recognition, the quiet yes whispered without lips. Destiny is not a reward for striving. It is not a prize for those who hustle harder. It is the natural homecoming of beings who have surrendered enough to be truly seen. In Zen, it is said, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So too with destiny. It arrives not through effort, but through readiness, not through frantic seeking, but through becoming. And what of true love? The soul had learned. True love is not the answer to loneliness. It is the celebration of aloneness already transcended. It is not the fixing of brokenness. It is the joyful meeting of two beings who have already remembered their own wholeness. Thus, when destiny called again, and true love returned, the soul did not rush to capture it, did not tremble in fear of losing it. It simply bowed to the mystery, bowed to the unfolding, bowed to the truth that real connection is never about possession. It is about presence. Presence so full, so unguarded, that no contract is needed, no promises required. Just the simple, radical miracle of two souls saying, I see you, I know you, I walk with you. And whether for a day, a season, or eternity, it is enough. Thus, destiny was no longer seen as a force outside the soul, but as a pulse within it. A steady drumming that led the soul not outward into frantic striving, but inward, into surrender. And in that surrender, everything that was truly meant to be, love, reunion, awakening, blossomed in its own time, without force, without fear. Because when you align with the deep current of your own being, what is meant for you does not pass you by. It cannot. The soul smiled at this, smiled at the long journey that had once seemed like a series of losses and delays, now revealed as the perfect choreography of awakening. And it understood, finally, destiny is not fate written in stone. It is the flowering of spirit through the soil of surrender. It is not a schedule to keep. It is a rhythm to dance to. And when two souls find that they are dancing to the same invisible song, when their movements harmonize without effort, when their silences speak louder than their words, then destiny has fulfilled itself, not in the fireworks of external triumph, but in the quiet revolution of inner knowing. A revolution that no storm can undo. A revolution that distance cannot silence. A revolution that time cannot erode. Because when destiny calls, nothing, not fear, not distance, not even death, can stop true love. If you've stayed with me until now, you know, true love is not about clinging. It's not about perfect timing, endless assurances, or possession. It's about recognizing the pulse of destiny within yourself. It's about allowing love to be what it was always meant to be, a mirror for awakening, a song that sings through you, whether near or far, seen or unseen. What is meant for you will not pass you by, not when you align with your own stillness, not when you let go of chasing and start embracing. In a world that often measures love by appearances and timelines, it's revolutionary to love in silence, in trust, and in surrender. Thank you for walking this path with me today. If you found value in this reflection, I warmly invite you again to like this video, subscribe to Stillness Unfolded, and leave a comment sharing your own journey, your thoughts, or simply your presence. Your support helps this channel blossom and allows these teachings to reach more souls who might be waiting for exactly this moment of stillness. Remember, this video is filled with layers of insight. Sometimes, the deepest messages reveal themselves when you revisit the silence within. May you walk forward not seeking, but radiating. Until next time, may your heart stay open and your spirit stay free.